Welcome to this segment of the Truth Report. I'm Barry Nussbaum. Last Friday, Republican leaders abruptly pulled their overhaul of the nation's healthcare system from the House floor. Why? Simply put, there were so many conflicting opinions as to what the American Health Care Act should look like within the GOP. The party, frankly, could not agree on the bill as presented, and so the necessary votes to pass it just weren't there. Today, on the Truth Report, we will examine what happened in Congress last week with the proposed new Health Care Act and discuss what is the truth behind the Trump agenda, starting with health care, the bill that failed, and proceed to the next items on his goal list as President of the United States. 1. The American Health Care Act was withdrawn from consideration on the floor last Friday. The decision leaves former President Barack Obama's chief domestic achievement in place. In other words, Obamacare remains the law of the land. In an interview with the Washington Post, Trump said, quote, "We couldn't get one Democratic vote," unquote. He could have added, "and we were missing a bunch of Republican votes as well." Trump said he would not ask Republican leaders to reintroduce the legislation in the coming weeks. And congressional leaders made clear that the bill, known as the American Health Care Act, was dead. Shortly after the decision was made, House Speaker Paul Ryan told reporters his party came really close today, but we came up short. And then he added, "We're going to be living with Obamacare for the foreseeable future. It's done. DOA."
To a governing party comes with growing pains, and well, we're feeling those growing pains today. We came really close today, but we came up short. I spoke to the president just a little while ago, and I told him that the best thing I think to do is to pull this bill, and he agreed with that decision. I will not sugarcoat this. This is a disappointing day for us. Doing big things is hard. All of us, myself included, we will need time to reflect on how we got to this moment, what we could have done to do it better. But ultimately, this all kind of comes down to a choice. Are all of us willing to give a little to get something done? Are we willing to say yes to the good, to the very good, even if it's not the perfect? Because if we're willing to do that, we still have such an incredible opportunity in front of us.
Said Energy and Commerce Committee Chair Greg Walden, a Republican from Oregon who drafted much of the legislation. This bill is dead. Instead, Republican leaders said they would wait for the Affordable Care Act to encounter fatal problems, believing the Democrats will then want to work with them to make changes. Quote, "As you know, I've been saying for years that the best thing to do is let Obamacare explode and then go make a deal with the Democrats and have one unified deal," Trump said. "And they will have to come to us. We won't have to come to them." Quote, "Since 2010, every Republican, with the exception of probably a handful, has campaigned from dog catcher on up that they would do everything they could to repeal and replace Obamacare," unquote. That's from White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer Friday, as Ryan left shortly after for the White House to tell Trump the bill would fail.
The president and congressional Republicans promised the American people that they would repeal and replace this broken system. Obamacare's Washington-driven one-size-fits-all plan had 7 years to prove its case, and look what it's left us with.
Trump personally had lobbied 120 lawmakers either in person or on the phone, Spicer told reporters last Friday. The president, he said, had left everything on the field. The White House did not think that defeat would slow other parts of Trump's agenda, including tax reform and changes to immigration, Spicer added in the press conference. Vice President Pence, White House Chief of Staff Reince Priebus, and Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price also engaged in last-ditch efforts to win over members on Friday, including a midday huddle with Freedom Caucus members at the Capitol Hill Club, a GOP social hall next door to the headquarters of the Republican National Committee. The heart of the argument made by GOP leaders was that keeping the Affordable Care Act would be a worse outcome than passing a potentially flawed replacement. That worked with some Republicans, but not all of them. At the Capitol, a deflated Ryan said he would confer with fellow Republicans in the coming days about how to proceed going forward. But he made it clear health care would no longer be a central agenda item. The president, on the other hand, said he had no problem waiting for the Democrats to seek cooperation with the Republicans on health care. He said, "I never said I was going to repeal and replace in the first 61 days. Well, in fact, Trump said repeatedly as a candidate and before his inauguration that he would work to repeal the ACA on his first day in office. And obviously, that didn't happen. So, moving on. Item 2, nominate a Supreme Court justice. President Trump chose Neil Gorsuch, an appeals court judge, for Supreme Court justice. Judge Gorsuch spoke at Senate hearings last week. In spite of Judge Gorsuch being previously confirmed for the appeals court with an almost unanimous Democrat and Republican support, Democrats have now vowed to filibuster the nomination in the Senate. However, due to a rule change pushed through a few years ago by Democratic Senator and Senator Majority Leader Harry Reid, when he was the boss, the party in power can now change the rules to require only 51 votes instead of 60 to confirm a new justice. This is called the nuclear option, and Republicans have promised to invoke it if necessary to get Gorsuch confirmed. Number 3. Suspend immigration from what Mr. Trump calls terror-prone regions. After key sections of an executive order were blocked by several courts, you'll remember President Trump signed a new order that blocked all refugees for 120 days and issued a 90-day ban on anyone entering the United States from 6 predominantly Muslim countries. That new order was also blocked by federal judges. It remains to be seen whether President Trump attempts a new executive order that takes into account the previous court rulings in his 2 first orders. Or he waits an appeal to the higher courts, where it is almost universally expected to have the lower courts' rulings reversed. Such a reversal would amount to a green light on one of Trump's executive orders. Should an appeal get all the way to the Supreme Court, the confirmation of Neil Gorsuch to the Supreme Court would be critical to that court's final disposition of the ruling on the lower court cases. Number 4, cut taxes. Support for tax cuts unites nearly all members of the Republican Party, unlike healthcare. Throughout the campaign, candidate Trump promised to do 3 things on this subject. 1, lower tax rates at the high end of income, decrease the number of different tax rates, and lower corporate income taxes. Number 5, increase deportations of undocumented immigrants. Mr. Trump plans to expel undocumented migrants more aggressively, prioritizing anyone who's been convicted of a criminal offense. As we reported last week on Because You Asked, ICE is already implementing a new Trump policy in regards to sanctuary cities' catch and release of illegal immigrant criminals. The weekly report of such releases is already gaining press coverage and will no doubt result in more detentions and deportations. Number 6, appoint his cabinet. President Trump has selected nominees for each position in his cabinet, and a bunch have already been confirmed by the Senate. Here are the names that are in: Tillerson, Mnuchin, Mattis, Sessions, Zinke, Ross, Price, Carson, Chow, Perry, DeVoe, Shulkin, Kelly, Perdue, Acosta. Democrats in the Congress have promised to fight every single nominee, and thus have done so. President Trump's appointments and expected confirmations are running well behind every single previous president in recent history. And as a result of the Democratic Party opposition, he doesn't have his cabinet in place yet. Number 7, build a border wall and get Mexico to pay for it. President Trump ordered the construction of a wall, but he will need legislation to pay for it. In the meantime, by executive order, the designs have started and the bidding is taking place currently. It is unclear when actual new construction will start, but we have no doubt here that the wall, or in some places a fence, will be built. Number 8. Impose import taxes. President Trump supports a 20% tax on many imports from countries with an unfair economic advantage and has considered proposing such a tax on Mexican imports to pay for the wall. But such a proposal may face strong resistance from Republicans in Congress. Number 9. Invest in American infrastructure. President Trump wants to spend, get this, $1 trillion to rebuild sagging infrastructure. He faces opposition from Republicans and, get this, enthusiasm from Democrats. This massive increase in federal government spending for infrastructure projects was a major part of his campaign platform. Ironically, it's the Democrats that are behind this plan and the Republicans that are opposing it. So, there is your Trump agenda for the foreseeable future. Stay in touch. We will be following up on this story as news develops. You can write to me directly by sending me an email to barry@americantruthproject.org. And you can go to our website where you can sign up to be on our mailing list so you never miss an important episode in the future. You can handle the truth. We intend to bring it to you. I'm Barry Nussbaum.